The telegram arrived at the boarding house in Philadelphia on a Tuesday morning in October 1876, and Amelia Vance read it 3 times before her hands stopped shaking enough to fold the paper and tuck it into her skirt pocket. Her brother was dead, trampled by a spooked horse outside Cheyenne, Wyoming, and his ranch now belonged to her, along with his debts, his livestock, and apparently a foreman named Preston Fletcher who had been running things since the accident 2 weeks prior. She stood at the window of her tiny rented room, watching coal smoke curl from chimneys across the gray Philadelphia skyline, and tried to imagine what Wyoming looked like. Wide, she supposed. Empty. Nothing like the cramped streets and crowded markets she had known her entire 22 years. Nothing like the sewing factory where she spent 12 hours a day hunched over fabric that would become dresses for women who would never notice her name stitched into the hem. The landlady knocked twice and announced a visitor before Amelia could compose herself. She descended the narrow stairs to find Mrs. Chen, her supervisor from the factory, waiting with pressed lips and calculating eyes. "I heard about your brother," Mrs. Chen said without preamble. "You will be leaving, I suppose." "I have to settle his affairs," Amelia replied carefully. "And then you will sell and return." Amelia had not considered any option beyond getting on the train. "I do not know yet." Mrs. Chen's expression hardened. "If you leave, there will be no position waiting. I have 12 girls who would take your station tomorrow." The threat should have frightened her. Instead, Amelia felt something loosen in her chest, some knot she had been tying tighter for years. "I understand." She packed that afternoon. Everything she owned fit into 2 carpet bags and a small trunk. 3 dresses, 2 work shifts, undergarments, stockings, 1 good pair of boots, her mother's cameo brooch, a Degria type of Thomas taken before he went west 5 years ago, and the $17 she had saved in a tin box under her mattress. The train ticket to Cheyenne would cost most of it. The journey took 4 days. Amelia watched America transform outside the rattling windows, cities giving way to farmland, farmland to prairie, trees becoming scarce and then nearly absent. Other passengers came and went. A salesman tried to engage her in conversation until she pretended to sleep. A minister's wife shared bread and cheese and asked pointed questions about whether Amelia was traveling to meet a husband. "A foreman," Amelia said, which was true enough and stopped further inquiry. She arrived in Cheyenne on a Saturday afternoon with dust coating every surface of the train car and $3 left in her purse. The station was smaller than she expected, just a wooden platform and a building that served as both depot and telegraph office. Mountains rose in the distance like something from a painting, too large to be real. A man stood near a wagon at the edge of the platform, and Amelia knew immediately he was waiting for her. He was perhaps 26 or 27, tall and lean in the way of men who worked outdoors, with dark hair that needed cutting and several days of stubble shadowing his jaw. He wore dusty trousers, a shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows despite the October chill, a worn leather vest, and a hat that had seen better years. When he noticed her looking, he straightened and approached with his hat in his hands. "Miss Vance." His voice was deeper than she anticipated, with a rough quality that suggested he did not spend much time talking. "Yes, Mr. Fletcher, Preston Fletcher, yes, madam," he gestured to her trunk. "That everything?" "Yes." He collected her luggage with an ease that suggested the trunk's weight was negligible, loading everything into the wagon bed before offering his hand to help her onto the seat. His palm was heavily calloused, his grip careful. "It is about 2 hours to the ranch," he said once they were moving, the 2 horses pulling the wagon at a steady walk through Cheyenne's wide dirt streets. "We will stop at the general store first. You will need supplies. Amelia bristled at the assumption. I have managed my own needs for quite some time, Mr. Fletcher. He glanced at her, and she caught a glimpse of pale eyes, blue or gray, she could not quite tell in the afternoon light. I do not doubt it, but unless you packed winter clothes in that trunk, you will freeze before Thanksgiving. Wyoming is not Philadelphia. How did you know I was from Philadelphia? Thomas mentioned it. He talked about you sometimes. Preston returned his attention to the road. The store is on the way. You can look, and if you do not want anything, that is your choice. But I would be a poor foreman if I did not mention it. There was no condescension in his tone, no insistence, just a statement of fact and then silence, as though her decision was final and he had no interest in arguing. Amelia found herself studying his profile, the straight line of his nose, the set of his jaw. Thomas had never mentioned much about his foreman in his infrequent letters, only that Fletcher was reliable and knew cattle better than anyone in the territory. "What happened to my brother?" she asked. The telegram said very little. Preston's hands tightened on the reins, then deliberately relaxed. A snake spooked his horse while he was checking fence line on the north pasture. He was thrown. His foot caught in the stirrup and the horse dragged him before anyone could catch up. He paused. He did not suffer long, I am sorry. The words were simple, but Amelia heard genuine regret in them. Were you there? I was the one who caught the horse. Too late. They rode in silence for a while. Cheyenne gave way to open country, grass stretching in every direction under a sky so vast it made Amelia's throat tight. The air smelled different here, clean and sharp, without the coal smoke and waste smell of Philadelphia streets. Thomas always said he would send for me eventually, she said. When the ranch was established, when he had built a proper house. The house is not fancy, but it is sound. He added a room last spring. I think he was planning to write to you about coming out. And now I am here anyway. Amelia folded her hands in her lap. What is the state of things, Mr. Fletcher? Truthfully, he considered for a moment. The ranch has 300 head of cattle, 40 horses, 2 hands besides me, and debts to the bank in town that are manageable if we get the herd to market next month. Thomas was a good rancher, learned fast. The operation is solid, and you have been running it since he died. Someone had to. Did my brother pay you well? Well enough. But not recently. Preston glanced at her again, longer this time. He paid what he could. I am not worried about wages right now. You should be. A man should be paid for his work. Right now, I am more concerned with making sure there is still a ranch to work. He pulled the wagon to a stop in front of a large wooden building with a painted sign reading Anderson's General Store. Your choice, Miss Vance. We can go in, or we can head straight to the ranch. Amelia looked down at her traveling dress, wrinkled and dusty, and thought about the 2 other dresses packed in her trunk, both equally unsuitable for whatever work awaited her. How much do I owe the bank? About $800. Her stomach dropped, and I have $3 to my name. The ranch has operating funds, enough to get through the winter if we are careful. Preston climbed down from the wagon, then turned back to look up at her. But that is my point. You will need proper clothes, boots, a coat. This is not charity, Miss Vance. This is practicality. You cannot work in that dress. I did not say I was going to work. No. He tilted his head slightly. What were you planning to do? Amelia realized she had no answer. She had spent 4 days on a train without thinking beyond arriving, beyond seeing what her brother had built. I suppose I thought I would give orders, as the owner. You can do that if you want. It is your ranch. Preston's expression did not change, but something in his voice gentled. But I am not going to lie to you about what that means. We have 2 hands, Miguel and Charlie. Good men, hard workers, but not foremen. Thomas hired me because I know cattle and I know how to manage an operation. If you want to sit in the house and tell me what to do secondhand, you can try. But you will not know what orders to give because you will not know what needs doing or when or how. You will be guessing, and ranching does not forgive guesses. So I should simply let you continue making all decisions. No, he said it firmly. You should learn. Ride out with me, see the operation, understand the work, ask questions, make informed choices. He paused. I am not your servant, Miss Vance, and I will not treat you like a child who needs protection from the truth. This ranch is yours by law. But if you want it to be yours in practice, you need to know it. Then you can give all the orders you want, and they will be good ones. Amelia stared at him, something unfamiliar rising in her chest. In Philadelphia, men told her what to do constantly. Factory supervisors, landlords, shopkeepers who assumed she could not count change. Even Thomas, in his letters, had been protective, promising to take care of her if she would only wait, only be patient. But Preston Fletcher stood beside the wagon with dust on his boots and exhaustion shadowing his eyes and offered her not protection but partnership. Not orders but choices. I will need a coat then, she said finally. And boots. What else? The corner of his mouth lifted, not quite a smile. Come on, I will show you. Inside, the store was dim and crowded with goods, everything from flour sacks to saddles. A man behind the counter greeted Preston by name, then looked at Amelia with open curiosity. Miss Vance, this is Hank Anderson. His store supplies most of the ranches around here. Preston gestured to the shelves. Hank, Miss Vance is taking over the Vance Ranch. She needs winter clothes. Hank's eyebrows rose. You are keeping the place. I am considering it, Amelia said, which was true. An hour ago, she had not thought beyond settling Thomas's affairs and returning east. Now, standing in this dusty store with mountains visible through the window and a foreman who spoke to her like she had a mind worth consulting, she found herself thinking about staying. Preston guided her through the store with the same practical efficiency he seemed to apply to everything. He pointed out coats, suggesting wool over lighter fabrics. He showed her boots with good soles, explaining that she would be walking through mud and snow and needed support. When she hesitated over the prices, he said quietly, Buy what you need now. We can settle accounts after the cattle sale. I do not want to go further into debt. It is not debt if it is necessary expense. You cannot work in a Philadelphia dress, Miss Vance. This is investment. She ended up with a heavy wool coat, 2 sturdy shirts made for men because the women's blouses were too delicate, a split riding skirt, thick socks, leather gloves, and boots that came up to her mid-calf. Preston added a hat without asking, wide-brimmed and practical. You will need it, he said when she started to protest. The sun out here will burn you badly. Hank tallied the purchases, and Preston paid from a small leather wallet, making note of the amount in a worn ledger he pulled from his vest pocket. I keep accounts for the ranch, he explained. Thomas wanted everything tracked. I will show you the books when we get there. They loaded the packages into the wagon and headed north. The sun was lowering toward the mountains, painting the grassland gold. Amelia changed her boots while they rode, unlacing her worn city shoes and pulling on the new leather. It felt strange, substantial, like she was putting on someone else's life. Tell me about Miguel and Charlie, she said as the landscape rolled past. Miguel Santos came up from Texas 3 years ago. He is about 30, good with horses, does not talk much but works hard. Charlie Webb is local, maybe 24, been with the ranch since Thomas bought it, talks too much, but he is loyal and does not complain about rough jobs. And you? Where did you come from? Preston was quiet for long enough that Amelia thought he might not answer. Montana Territory originally. My father had a ranch up there, lost it after a bad winter. I have been working cattle since I was 12, foreman jobs mostly, moving where the work is. What made you stay here? Thomas offered me a percentage if the ranch succeeded, not just wages but a stake. That is rare, he glanced at her. I suppose that arrangement died with him. Why would it? Because you own the ranch now, Miss Vance. You do not know me. You have no reason to honor a handshake deal between your brother and a drifter foreman. Amelia considered this. Did you and Thomas write down the terms? No. Then tell me what they were. Preston's jaw tightened. 5% of profits after debts are paid. To be renegotiated after 5 years. That seems fair. I will honor it. When he looked at her sharply, she met his gaze. You have kept this ranch running for 2 weeks without pay and without certainty that the new owner would keep you on. You clearly cared about my brother and his dream. Why would I not honor his agreement? Because most people do not. Then most people are foolish. Amelia adjusted her new coat around her shoulders. If we are to be partners in this enterprise, Mr. Fletcher, I need you to trust that I mean what I say. Partners. You said I should learn the ranch, understand the operation. That makes us partners, does it not? I may own the land, but you know how to make it profitable. Neither of us succeeds without the other. Preston was quiet for a long moment, his attention apparently fixed on the road ahead. Then he said, You are not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone who would sell immediately, or someone who would try to run things without knowing anything and ruin what Thomas built? I may still do the latter, Amelia admitted, but I promise to listen before I make decisions. That is the best I can offer. That is more than most would. He pointed ahead where buildings were becoming visible in the distance. That is home. The ranch was smaller than Amelia had imagined, but more substantial too. The house was a simple rectangle of rough-cut lumber with a covered porch, probably 3 or 4 rooms inside. A barn stood about 50 yards away, large and well-maintained, with several corrals spreading out from it. There was a bunkhouse, a chicken coop, and various other outbuildings she could not immediately identify. Cattle dotted the hillsides in the distance, dark shapes against the golden grass. Thomas built most of this himself the first year, Preston said as they approached. The house and barn were here when he bought the land, but he added everything else. The bunkhouse, the corrals, the chicken coop. There was pride in his voice. He wanted something permanent. He never married. No. He said he would wait until the ranch was established. Preston pulled the wagon to a stop near the house. I think he was waiting until he could bring you out, give you a proper home. The words hit harder than Amelia expected. Thomas had been 8 years older, more father than brother after their parents died. He had worked in Philadelphia factories alongside her until he saved enough for the train west, promising to send for her when he could. 5 years of letters, growing less frequent as the ranch consumed his time, always ending with soon. He talked about you a lot, Preston continued, climbing down and reaching for her trunk. Told everyone his sister was the smart one, that you could calculate figures in your head faster than he could write them down. Said you deserved better than factory work. Amelia blinked against unexpected tears. He never told me that. Thomas was not good with emotional words, but he meant them. 2 men emerged from the bunkhouse as Preston carried her trunk toward the house. One was clearly Miguel, dark-haired and compact with a cautious expression. The other must be Charlie, taller and younger with an open, friendly face. Miss Vance, this is Miguel Santos and Charlie Webb. Preston made introductions quickly. Miss Vance is Thomas's sister. She will be taking over the ranch. Both men removed their hats. Miguel nodded respectfully. Charlie grinned. Nice to meet you, Miss Vance. Thomas talked about you plenty. Sorry about your brother. Thank you. Amelia was not sure what else to say. "We will let Miss Vance get settled," Preston said before Charlie could continue. "Miguel, did you check the south fence?" "Finished this afternoon. 2 breaks, both repaired. Good. We will ride the north section tomorrow." He glanced at Amelia. "If that is acceptable to you, Miss Vance." She heard the question behind the question. He was asking if she wanted to come along, if she meant what she said about learning the ranch. "What time do we leave?" "Dawn." "Then I will be ready at dawn." Charlie's grin widened. "You ride, Miss Vance?" "No." "Oh," his expression faltered. "Well, that might make checking fence difficult." "Then someone will have to teach me," Amelia said firmly. "Tomorrow, if possible. This afternoon, if someone has time now." Miguel and Charlie exchanged glances. Preston set down her trunk on the porch and turned to face her. "You want to learn to ride today, after 4 days on a train?" "I want to be useful tomorrow. That requires learning today." She met his gaze. "Unless you think I cannot." Something flickered in his expression, gone too fast to name. "Miguel, saddle the bay mare, the gentle one." "You are sure, boss?" "Miss Vance is sure. That makes me sure." 20 minutes later, Amelia found herself standing next to a horse that seemed impossibly large up close. The mare was reddish-brown with a black mane and kind eyes, but Amelia's heart hammered against her ribs nonetheless. "This is Rosie," Preston said, one hand on the horse's neck. "She is the best teacher we have. Steady, patient, not easily spooked." He gestured to the saddle. "Foot in the stirrup, hold the horn, pull yourself up and swing your leg over. I will help." It took 3 tries, but Amelia managed to haul herself into the saddle, gripping the horn with both hands as the ground suddenly seemed very far below. The horse shifted, and Amelia's breath caught. "Easy." Preston's hand settled on her ankle, steadying. "Rosie is not going anywhere. Just breathe." Amelia forced air into her lungs. "This is higher than I anticipated." "That is normal. Everyone thinks that the first time." He handed her the reins, showing her how to hold them. "Gentle pressure to turn, pull back to stop, heels to go forward, but we are not doing any of that yet. First, you just sit. Get comfortable with the height and the movement." He led the mare in a slow circle around the corral, one hand on the bridle, talking the whole time in that low, steady voice. Amelia focused on his words, on the rhythm of the horse's walk, on not falling off. Gradually, her death grip on the horn loosened. Her breathing evened out. "Good," Preston said after the 5th circle. "You are doing well. I am sitting. That is not difficult. You are sitting without panicking. That is more difficult than you think." He released the bridle. "Now try guiding her." Gentle pressure left. The next hour passed in a blur of concentration. Amelia learned to turn, to stop, to start moving again without yanking the reins or kicking too hard. She learned how to post in the saddle when Rosie trotted, even though she spent most of that lesson bouncing awkwardly and biting back curses. Preston corrected her positioning with careful instructions, never touching her more than necessary, always explaining why each adjustment mattered. By the time Miguel called them for supper, Amelia was exhausted and her legs ached, but she could walk the mare around the corral without guidance. "Tomorrow we will practice outside the corral," Preston said, helping her dismount. Her legs nearly buckled when her feet hit the ground and his hands caught her elbows. "Steady." "I am fine." But she let him support her until her knees stopped shaking. "You did well. Most people do not try this after sitting on a train for 4 days. I said I would be ready at dawn." "I meant it. I am learning that about you." He released her carefully. "Come on. You should eat, and then I will show you the house and the books." Supper was beef stew served in the main house's kitchen, simple but good. Miguel had cooked, apparently a rotation between him and Charlie since Thomas died. They ate mostly in silence, the men clearly unsure how to navigate conversation with a woman at the table. Amelia was too tired to force small talk. Afterward, Preston spread ledgers across the kitchen table. Thomas kept good records. Income, expenses, cattle counts, everything. I have been maintaining them since he passed. Amelia bent over the books, her exhaustion fading as numbers focused her mind. She had always been good with figures, could see patterns and problems that others missed. Within minutes, she was absorbed. The debt is $800 to the bank, Preston explained, pointing to entries. But we have 300 head to sell next month. At current prices, that should bring about $3,000 give or take. After paying the hands, winter supplies, and miscellaneous expenses, we will clear the debt and have enough left over to make it through winter. Unless prices drop. Unless prices drop, he agreed. What is the risk of that? Hard to say. Depends on how many other ranchers are selling, how the market is back east. He ran a hand through his hair. There is always risk, but Thomas chose his breeding stock well. Our cattle are good quality. That helps. Amelia studied the numbers, calculating probabilities, weighing options. What if we held back some of the herd, sold only enough to clear the debt and cover expenses, kept the rest to breed? That is a gamble. If we have a hard winter, we could lose cattle to cold or starvation, and it means operating very lean until the next sale. But if the cattle survive, we would have more to sell next year. Build the operation faster. Preston leaned back in his chair, regarding her with something that might have been respect. That is true. It is also risky. Most owners in your position would want to sell everything and pocket the difference. I am not most owners. Amelia looked up from the ledger. This was Thomas's dream. If I am going to honor that, I need to think about building something lasting, not just making quick money. You are serious about staying then? I think I am. The words surprised her even as she spoke them. I have nothing waiting in Philadelphia except factory work and a rented room. Here, I have land and cattle and a chance to build something of my own. Why would I give that up? Because it is hard work. Because winters here are brutal. Because you could sell and live comfortably somewhere else. Comfortably bored. Amelia closed the ledger. I spent 4 days on a train imagining empty space, and it terrified me. But now that I am here, looking at these mountains and this sky, I cannot imagine going back to Philadelphia's narrow streets. Does that make me foolish? No, Preston said quietly. That makes you brave. Their eyes met across the table, and Amelia felt something shift between them, some understanding that went beyond words. He saw her, truly saw her, not as Thomas's sister or a woman who needed protecting, but as a person capable of making hard choices. And she saw him, this quiet man who had kept his promise to a dead friend and now offered her partnership instead of pity. I should let you rest, Preston said, breaking the moment. You have your own room now, the addition Thomas built. I moved his things out this afternoon. Guilt twisted in Amelia's chest. You did not have to do that. You need privacy. There is time to go through his belongings later when you are ready. He stood. Miguel and I sleep in the bunkhouse. Charlie is on night watch, checking for predators. If you need anything, ring the bell on the porch. Someone will hear. Thank you for everything today. You are welcome. He paused at the door. Get some sleep, Miss Vance. Dawn comes early. Amelia's room was small but comfortable, with a real bed instead of the narrow cot she had used in Philadelphia. She unpacked her few belongings, changed into her nightgown, and lay down expecting to fall asleep immediately. Instead, she stared at the ceiling, listening to unfamiliar sounds. Cattle lowing in the distance, wind whispering through grass, the creak of the house settling. She thought about Thomas, about all the dreams he had shared in his letters. She thought about Philadelphia, about Mrs. Chen and the factory and the life she had left behind without looking back. Mostly, she thought about Preston Fletcher and the way he had looked at her when she said they were partners. Like she was someone worth trusting. Amelia woke before dawn to someone knocking on her door. "Miss Vance, it is time." She dressed quickly in her new clothes, fumbling with the unfamiliar fastenings. The split skirt felt strange after years of full dresses, but she could move more freely. She braided her hair, pinned it up, and jammed the wide-brimmed hat on her head before emerging into the kitchen. Preston stood by the stove, pouring coffee into tin mugs. He had shaved, she noticed, and his hair was damp as though freshly washed. "Morning. Can you eat in the saddle? I can try." He handed her a mug and a biscuit wrapped in cloth. "Miguel is saddling Rosie. We will be checking the north fence line today, maybe 5 hours of riding total. If you need to stop, say so. No shame in that." They rode out as the sun broke over the mountains, turning the grassland from gray to gold. Preston set an easy pace, clearly aware of Amelia's inexperience. Miguel rode ahead, checking fence posts and wire. Amelia focused on staying in the saddle, on moving with Rosie's gait instead of against it. "You are doing well," Preston said after the first hour. "How do you feel? Everything hurts." "That is normal. It gets easier." They rode in comfortable silence for a while. Amelia watched him work, noting how he checked the cattle they passed, looking for signs of illness or injury. How he examined the grass, judging its quality. How he knew the land intimately, every rise and hollow, where water collected and where the ground was treacherous. "How much of this territory is ours?" she asked. "Thomas filed claim on 640 acres. Most of it is grazing land. The stream running through the property provides water year-round, which is valuable." He pointed north. "Our boundary line runs along that ridge. Johnson's ranch is beyond it. Are they good neighbors? Good enough." Old man Johnson offered to buy Thomas out twice, but Thomas refused. Johnson respected that. They found 2 breaks in the fence, places where cattle had pushed through or weather had damaged the wire. Preston and Miguel dismounted to make repairs while Amelia watched, learning how they stretched and fastened the wire, how they tested the tension. On the second repair, Preston handed her the pliers. "You try." Amelia dismounted clumsily and approached the fence. Preston guided her through the process, his hands covering hers briefly to show the correct grip, the right amount of pressure. He smelled like leather and soap and something else, something clean and masculine that made her suddenly aware of how close he was standing. "Good," he said when she finished. "That will hold." They ate lunch sitting on the grass, bread and cheese from Preston's saddlebag, water from a canteen. The mountains rose to the west, still capped with snow despite the relatively mild October weather. Cattle grazed peacefully in the middle distance. "It is beautiful here," Amelia said. "It is." Preston stretched out his legs, tilting his face to the sun. "That is why Thomas stayed. He could have gone to California where it is easier, but he loved this land." "Did you love it too? Is that why you stayed?" He considered the question. "I respected what he was building. Not many men come west with a plan. Most just drift, taking wages where they can find them, moving on when things get hard. Thomas had a vision. He worked toward it every day. That was worth staying for. And now that Thomas is gone," Preston looked at her, those pale eyes serious. "Now I am curious to see what you will build." The words sent warmth through her chest. "What if I fail? What if you succeed?" They returned to the ranch in late afternoon. Amelia could barely walk when she dismounted, her legs cramping, her back aching. Preston caught her arm when she stumbled. "Go soak in hot water if you can heat some. It will help the soreness. I need to help with evening chores. You need to rest. You rode 5 hours on your second day on a horse. That is enough for today. But there is work to be done, and it will get done." Miss Vance, being a partner means trusting the people working with you. Miguel and Charlie and I can handle evening chores. You need to recover so you can ride again tomorrow. Amelia wanted to argue but recognized the wisdom in his words. Tomorrow, then. Tomorrow. She spent the evening heating water on the stove and attempting to bathe in the small washroom off the kitchen, grateful for the privacy. The hot water helped, though she was still sore when she finally collapsed into bed. She fell asleep almost instantly. The next week established a pattern. Amelia rose before dawn, rode out with Preston, learned the ranch through observation and participation. She discovered she had a good eye for sick cattle, spotting the early signs of illness that Preston confirmed. She learned to rope, though she was terrible at it initially, missing more often than connecting. She learned to read the weather, to judge when storms were coming by the look of the sky and the behavior of the animals. Preston taught her with the same patient efficiency he applied to everything, never condescending, always explaining the why behind each task. When she struggled with something, he found different ways to explain until it clicked. When she succeeded, he praised her briefly and moved on, treating her accomplishments as expected rather than surprising. The other men adapted to her presence gradually. Miguel remained quiet but began answering her questions without waiting for Preston's approval. Charlie became something like a friend, teasing her gently about her improving riding and telling stories about the territory. By the second week, Amelia was riding well enough to work cattle, helping push them to better grazing or separate individuals that needed medical attention. Her hands blistered from fence work and rope, but Preston showed her how to wrap them, and calluses began forming. "You are getting comfortable in the saddle," he commented one afternoon as they rode back toward the ranch house. "Not just staying on anymore, actually riding. I had a good teacher." "You are a good student. That makes it easier." They crested a rise and the ranch buildings came into view below. Smoke rose from the bunkhouse chimney. The setting sun painted everything gold and orange, the mountains blazing with color. "I love this place," Amelia said suddenly. "I did not expect that. I thought I would miss Philadelphia, miss the city, but I do not even a little." Preston smiled, a real smile that transformed his usually serious face. "Thomas would be glad to hear that. You think he would approve of me taking over? I think he would be proud." Something in his voice made her look at him more carefully. "You miss him?" "Yes. He was a good man and a good friend." Preston's jaw tightened. "I keep expecting to see him come around the barn or call from the house. It does not seem real yet that he is gone." "Where is he buried?" "There is a small cemetery outside Cheyenne. I can take you if you want to visit." "I would like that." They rode in silence for a while. Then Preston said, "He would like you staying. He would like seeing what you are building here. You are not just maintaining what he started. You are making it your own." "We are making it our own," Amelia corrected. "I could not do this without you. You would figure it out. Maybe, but it would take much longer and I would make more mistakes." She looked at him seriously. "I mean what I said before. We are partners in this." "Your opinion matters to me." Preston held her gaze for a long moment. "That means something. Thank you." That evening, Amelia sat on the porch after supper, wrapped in her coat against the October chill. The stars were emerging, more than she had ever seen in Philadelphia, where city lights obscured all but the brightest. She tried to find constellations and failed, making up her own patterns instead. The door opened behind her. Preston stepped out, 2 mugs of coffee in his hands. "Thought you might want this. Thank you." She accepted the mug, wrapping her cold fingers around its warmth. He leaned against the porch railing, looking out at the darkening landscape. "You should know there is talk in town." "About me?" "About a woman trying to run a ranch alone. Some people think you will fail. Some think I am taking advantage, that I will cheat you or steal the ranch somehow." Anger flared in Amelia's chest. "That is ridiculous. You have done nothing but help me." "I know, but people talk. I wanted you to be prepared." "You care what they think." "No, but you might." Amelia considered this. In Philadelphia, she had cared desperately about reputation, about what people thought. A woman alone had so little margin for error. But here, with space to breathe and room to make her own choices, she found she cared less about gossip and more about results. "If the ranch succeeds, they will stop talking," she said finally. "And if it fails, they will talk regardless, so we might as well focus on succeeding." Preston's smile was visible even in the darkness. "That is a good philosophy. Besides, I have you. If anyone accuses you of cheating me, I will set them straight." "I appreciate that." They stood in comfortable silence, drinking coffee, watching the stars. Amelia was aware of his presence in a way she had not been before, of the solid reality of him beside her. She had spent 2 weeks working alongside him, learning from him, building trust. But now, in the quiet darkness, she found herself noticing other things. The breadth of his shoulders. The way he moved with unconscious grace. How his rare smiles made something warm bloom in her chest. She pushed the thoughts away. Preston was her foreman, her partner in running the ranch. Complicating that with attraction would be foolish. Besides, he had given no indication he saw her as anything other than his employer and student. "I should check the cattle one more time before bed," Preston said, draining his mug. "Sleep well, Miss Vance." "Amelia," she said impulsively. "You should call me Amelia. We are partners." "Miss Vance sounds too formal," he paused. "Amelia, then, and you should call me Preston. Preston." His name felt strange on her tongue, intimate. "Good night. Good night, Amelia." November arrived with cold wind and the first real snow. Preston and Miguel pushed the cattle closer to the ranch buildings, where they could be more easily monitored and fed if necessary. Charlie reinforced the barn and outbuildings against winter weather. Amelia learned to break ice on water troughs and recognize the signs of cold stress in animals. The cattle sale was scheduled for mid-November. Preston, Miguel, and a hired hand would drive the selected cattle to the railroad in Cheyenne, where buyers would inspect and purchase them. It would take 3 days there and 2 back, weather permitting. "You could come," Preston offered the night before they were set to leave. "See how the sale works. Someone should stay with the ranch. Charlie cannot manage everything alone." "That is true, but I wanted to offer the choice." Amelia smiled. "I appreciate that. Maybe next year." "Next year," he agreed. They left before dawn, pushing 200 head toward Cheyenne. Amelia stood on the porch watching until they disappeared over the northern rise, then turned to face 3 days of managing the ranch with only Charlie for help. It was harder than she anticipated. The remaining cattle needed constant monitoring as temperatures dropped. A windstorm damaged part of the barn roof, requiring emergency repairs. One of the horses developed a limp that Amelia had to treat based on instructions Preston had given weeks ago. By the time the men returned, she was exhausted, but proud too. She had managed. The ranch had not fallen apart in Preston's absence. She had made decisions, solved problems, kept everything running. Preston found her in the barn the evening they returned, treating the horse's leg. He stopped in the doorway, watching her work. "Charlie said you had a rough few days. Nothing we could not handle." Amelia straightened, wiping her hands on her trousers. She wore men's pants now when working, having discovered skirts were impractical for most ranch tasks. "How did the sale go?" "Well, we got good prices. After expenses and debt, we cleared $1,400. $1,400. That was more than she had expected. The cattle were high quality, and there were fewer sellers than anticipated. We were fortunate. He pulled the familiar ledger from his coat pocket. I want to go over the numbers with you, make sure everything is recorded properly. They spent the next hour at the kitchen table, reviewing accounts. With the debt cleared and winter supplies purchased, they had enough money to operate comfortably until spring. Preston had even paid himself and the hands their overdue wages. So we made it, Amelia said, leaning back in her chair. The ranch is solvent, for now. Spring will bring new challenges. But we have breathing room. That is more than we had a month ago. She looked at him across the table. Thank you, Preston, for everything. I know I have said it before, but I mean it. I could not have done any of this without you. You would have found a way, maybe, but it would have been harder and lonelier. She hesitated, then continued, I am glad you stayed. I am glad we are doing this together. Something shifted in Preston's expression, his usual reserve cracking slightly. I am glad, too. Their eyes held for a moment too long. Amelia felt her breath catch, awareness prickling across her skin. Then Preston looked away, closing the ledger with deliberate care. It is late, we should both rest. Yes, but neither of them moved. Amelia. Her name was rough in his voice. I need to tell you something. What? He stood abruptly, pacing to the window. This is not appropriate. You are my employer. What is not appropriate? Preston turned to face her, and the expression in his eyes made her heart stutter. The way I have been thinking about you. The way I look forward to morning because it means riding out together. How I find excuses to talk to you, to be near you. He ran a hand through his hair. You hired me to run this ranch, and I am letting personal feelings interfere. That is unprofessional. Amelia stood slowly, her pulse racing. What if they are not interfering? What if I have been thinking about you too, Amelia? Preston, you told me I could make choices, that I was your equal, not your employer giving orders you had to follow. She crossed the kitchen until she stood in front of him. So I am choosing to tell you that I care about you, not just as my foreman or my partner in running this ranch. As a man. I care about you. You do not know me well enough to care. I know you have been nothing but honest with me from the moment we met. I know you work harder than anyone I have ever seen. I know you kept your promise to my brother even after he died. I know you treat me like I have value beyond being Thomas's sister or a woman you need to protect. She reached out tentatively, touching his hand. That is enough to care about. The rest I want to learn. Preston's fingers curled around hers. If we do this, it changes everything. Everything has already changed. I am not the woman who arrived from Philadelphia expecting to give orders. And you are not just my foreman anymore. We have been building something together, Preston. Why should we not build something personal too? He looked down at their joined hands, then back at her face. Whatever he was searching for, he must have found it, because he lifted his free hand to cup her cheek with a gentleness that made her throat tight. Are you sure? I am sure. He kissed her carefully, like she was something precious that might break. His lips were warm against hers, the kiss chaste and questioning. Amelia answered by leaning into him, her free hand coming up to rest against his chest where she could feel his heart racing. Preston's arm circled her waist, pulling her closer. The kiss deepened, no longer questioning but claiming, and Amelia felt heat rush through her entire body. She had been kissed before, clumsy fumbling in Philadelphia alleys by boys who wanted something quick. This was different. This was Preston seeing her, wanting her, choosing her with the same deliberate care he applied to everything. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. We should talk about this, he said. Tomorrow, tonight I just want to feel this. Feel what? Happy, wanted. Like I finally found where I belong. Preston's arms tightened around her. You do belong here. You belong with me if you want to be. I want to be. They stood holding each other in the quiet kitchen while wind rattled the windows and the fire burned low in the stove. Eventually, Preston stepped back, though he kept her hand in his. "I should go, let you rest, but tomorrow we need to discuss what this means." "What do you think it means?" "I think it means I am courting you if you will allow it, properly, with intentions." Warmth flooded Amelia's chest. "I would like that very much." "Good." He lifted her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles. "Sleep well, Amelia." "You too, Preston." He left reluctantly, and Amelia stood in the kitchen listening to his boots cross the yard toward the bunkhouse. Then she climbed into bed, wrapped herself in blankets, and lay awake for a long time replaying the kiss, the feel of his arms around her, the way he had looked at her like she was everything he wanted. The next morning felt different. Amelia was aware of every moment Preston's eyes found hers across the breakfast table, aware of how his hand lingered when he helped her mount Rosie. They rode out to check cattle with Miguel, who tactfully said nothing about the tension between them but wore a small, knowing smile. Over the following weeks, Preston courted her with the same quiet determination he brought to ranch work. He saved the best cuts of meat for her at supper. He helped her practice roping in the evenings, standing close to adjust her grip. He brought her coffee in the mornings and checked to make sure she had enough firewood at night. They stole moments alone when they could. Quick kisses behind the barn, sitting together on the porch after everyone else had gone to bed, talking about dreams and fears and the future. Learning each other slowly, building foundation for something lasting. "What did you want before you came here?" Preston asked one night, both of them wrapped in blankets against December cold. "I do not know. Survival, mostly. A little comfort. I never thought much beyond the next day." Amelia leaned against his shoulder. "What about you?" "A place of my own, security. I was tired of drifting, never putting down roots because I might have to move at any moment." He stroked her hair. "But I never thought about sharing it with someone. That seemed like a luxury for men with more prospects. And now I cannot imagine doing this without you." Amelia tilted her face up to kiss him. He responded immediately, one hand cupping the back of her head, the other pulling her closer. The kiss was deeper than their first, more confident, edged with want that made her pulse race. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Preston said roughly, "We should marry." "Is that a proposal?" "Yes, no, I am saying it wrong." He took her face in both hands. "Amelia Vance, I want to marry you. I want to build this ranch together, not as foreman and owner but as partners in everything. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep beside you every night. I want whatever future we can make together." Tears pricked Amelia's eyes. "Yes. Yes. Yes, I will marry you. Yes to all of it." Preston kissed her again, fierce and joyful. "I do not have a ring. I do not need a ring. I need you. You have me. You have had me since you insisted on learning to ride your first day here, since you said we were partners and meant it." "I love you," Amelia said, the words spilling out. "I did not plan to. I came here expecting to manage a business arrangement, and instead I found you. I love you too. So much it scares me sometimes." They sat holding each other under the vast Wyoming sky, planning a future that felt as limitless as the land around them. They would marry in spring, Preston said. Go to Cheyenne, find a minister, make it legal and binding. Miguel and Charlie could witness. Afterward, they would file paperwork making Preston co-owner of the ranch, true partners in law as well as practice. "Are you sure about signing the ranch over partially?" Preston asked. "It is yours by right. It is ours by effort. You have worked as hard as I have to make it succeed. Why should not you share in ownership? Because that is not how the world usually works. Then we will change how the world works, at least our corner of it." They married in April 1877 at the small church in Cheyenne with Miguel and Charlie and Hank Anderson as witnesses. Amelia wore a simple blue dress purchased for the occasion. Preston wore his cleanest shirt and actually combed his hair. The minister looked slightly confused by their insistence on non-traditional vows that emphasized partnership and equality, but he complied. "I promise to respect your choices and honor your voice," Preston said, holding both her hands. "I promise to build our life together, not dictate it. I promise to see you always as my equal, my partner, my love." "I promise to trust your judgment and value your wisdom," Amelia replied, her voice steady despite tears on her cheeks. "I promise to work beside you, not behind you. I promise to choose you every day in everything." "You may kiss your bride," the minister said, sounding relieved to be back on familiar ground. Preston kissed her thoroughly, to Charlie's whooping approval and Miguel's quiet smile. They spent their wedding night at a hotel in Cheyenne, the first real privacy they had shared. Preston was careful with her, taking time to learn what she liked, checking constantly that she was comfortable. Amelia found joy in discovering him in turn, in the freedom to touch and be touched, to claim and be claimed. "I never imagined this," she whispered afterward, wrapped in his arms in the narrow hotel bed. "I never let myself imagine being this happy." Preston kissed her forehead. "We are just beginning." They returned to the ranch as husband and wife, partners in truth. Charlie had hung a welcome home sign in the barn, which made Amelia laugh and cry simultaneously. Miguel had prepared their favorite meal. That night, they moved Preston's things into the main house, into Amelia's room that was now their room. The spring and summer of 1877 were the busiest, happiest months of Amelia's life. She and Preston worked from dawn to long after dusk, managing the growing cattle herd, improving fences and buildings, planning for expansion. They hired 2 more hands, increasing their workforce as the operation grew. In bed at night, exhausted and content, they talked about the future, about buying more land, about building a larger house eventually, something with multiple bedrooms. Preston started that conversation carefully, watching her face for reaction. "I was thinking," he said, "if we wanted children, eventually, there would be room for them." Amelia's heart swelled. They had not discussed children explicitly, though she had thought about it privately. "I would like that, not immediately, but someday. No, I want time with just us first. Time to establish the ranch firmly, to enjoy being married without the additional responsibility. Does that bother you? Not at all. I want whatever you want." He pulled her closer. "And I like the idea of having you to myself for a while." "Good, because I like that idea too." But nature had different plans. By August, Amelia recognized the signs. Her monthly courses had stopped. She was tired in a way that had nothing to do with ranch work. Certain smells made her nauseous. When she finally told Preston one evening in late August, he went very still. "Are you happy about it?" he asked carefully. "I do not know yet. I am surprised. We were careful. Not careful enough, apparently." He studied her face. "But are you all right, health-wise?" "I think so. I should see a doctor in town to be sure." They rode to Cheyenne the next week. The doctor confirmed what Amelia already knew and assured her she was healthy. The baby would come in late February or early March, he estimated. He gave her instructions for diet and rest, warned her against heavy lifting, and sent them on their way with congratulations. "February," Preston said as they drove the wagon home. "Middle of winter. I know. Are you scared? Terrified?" She looked at him. "Are you?" "Yes, but also happy. We will figure it out together. Like everything else. Like everything else." They told Miguel and Charlie that night. Both men were delighted, promising to take on extra work to compensate as Amelia's pregnancy progressed. Miguel's sister knew about babies, he said, and would come help when the time came. Charlie immediately started building a cradle in the barn, working on it in his spare time with serious concentration. As autumn turned to winter, Amelia's body changed. She felt ungainly and uncomfortable, frustrated by increasing limitations. Preston was endlessly patient, helping her with tasks that had become difficult, holding her when she cried from hormones and exhaustion, reminding her constantly that she was beautiful. "I am enormous," she protested one night in January, trying to find a comfortable position in bed. "You are perfect." He rested his hand on her swollen belly. "You are growing our child. That is a miracle. It does not feel miraculous. It feels uncomfortable and exhausting." "I know. I wish I could carry some of the burden for you." The sincerity in his voice made her throat tight. "You do. Every day, by managing everything I cannot do anymore, by not making me feel guilty about it." "Why would you feel guilty? You are doing the hardest job of all." She loved him more in that moment than she had thought possible. Their daughter was born on March 3, 1878, after 16 hours of labor. Miguel's sister, Rosa, attended along with a midwife from Cheyenne. Preston paced outside for most of it, against protocol but too anxious to leave entirely. When Rosa finally called him in, he found Amelia exhausted but smiling, cradling a tiny bundle. "Meet your daughter," she said. Preston approached carefully, reverently. The baby was impossibly small, with dark hair like his and delicate features that favored Amelia. When her eyes opened briefly, they were blue-gray, uncertain what color they would become. "She is perfect," he breathed. "She is ours." Amelia looked up at him. "What should we name her?" They had discussed names but never settled on anything. Now, looking at his daughter, Preston said, "Sarah." "After my mother." "Sarah Fletcher, I like that." "Sarah Vance Fletcher," he corrected. "She should have both our names." Amelia's eyes filled with tears. "You mean it. We are partners, remember? That extends to our children too." He sat carefully on the edge of the bed, and Amelia transferred Sarah into his arms. Preston held his daughter with extreme care, marveling at her tiny fingers, her little nose, the way she fit perfectly in the crook of his elbow. "Hello, Sarah," he murmured. "I am your father. That is your mother. We are going to take very good care of you, and we are going to teach you to be strong and smart and brave. You are going to grow up on this ranch with sky above you and mountains around you, and you are going to know you can do anything." Amelia watched her husband with their daughter and felt her heart might burst from happiness. The first months with Sarah were exhausting. She cried often, slept erratically, and demanded constant attention. Preston and Amelia took turns walking her at night. Miguel and Charlie helped however they could, entertaining her when she was fussy so Amelia could rest. Rosa stayed for 2 weeks, teaching Amelia about feeding and bathing and all the small skills that kept a baby thriving. But there were moments of pure joy too. Sarah's first smile, directed at Preston while he made silly faces. Her laughter when Amelia tickled her feet. The way she tracked movement with her eyes, already curious about the world. "She is going to be smart," Preston declared one evening, watching Sarah grab at dangling toys. "She is 2 months old. I can tell. She has your eyes, your curiosity. She has your determination. Look at how she will not give up trying to reach that rattle." They smiled at each other over their daughter's head, partners in this new adventure as they had been in everything else. As Sarah grew, so did the ranch. They bought additional land from a retiring neighbor, expanding their grazing area. They upgraded the barn and built a proper chicken coop. They increased their herd carefully, selecting breeding stock that would improve quality. By 1880, The ranch was one of the most successful operations in the region. Amelia managed the books and correspondence, working around Sarah's needs. Preston handled day-to-day operations with Miguel's help. Charlie had been promoted to assistant foreman, taking on more responsibility as the crew expanded. They now employed 6 hands full-time, with additional help during busy seasons. Sarah took her first steps in the ranch yard with Preston and Miguel cheering her on. She spoke her first word, "Papa," while Preston was carrying her on his shoulders checking fence. Amelia pretended to be offended, but she loved seeing the bond between father and daughter. "Should we think about another?" Preston asked one night in late 1880. Sarah was nearly 3, sleeping soundly in the small bedroom they had added to the house. "Or is one enough?" Amelia considered. "I think I would like another eventually, but not immediately. I am enjoying Sarah at this age, and the ranch needs attention too. Whatever you think is best." But again, nature had her own timeline. Amelia discovered she was pregnant in early 1881. This time she felt more prepared, less frightened. She knew what to expect, and she had Preston's unwavering support. Their son was born in September 1881, arriving faster than Sarah had with less drama. They named him Thomas, after her brother. Thomas had Preston's eyes and Amelia's nose, a robust baby who seemed determined to make his presence known. Sarah was fascinated by her baby brother, wanting to help with everything. Preston taught her to be gentle, to support his head when she held him, to bring diapers when needed. She took her role as big sister seriously. "We have 2 now," Preston said one night, watching Amelia nurse Thomas while Sarah slept. "That is a good number. Are you saying you want to stop?" "I am saying I am content, but if you want more, I am willing. Let us see how we manage with these 2 first." Amelia smiled tiredly. "But I am content too. This feels complete." The years that followed were full and rich. Sarah grew into a serious, determined child who followed Preston everywhere, learning ranch work almost before she could properly reach the stirrups. Thomas was quieter, more thoughtful, but equally curious. Both children learned to ride young, to understand cattle, to respect the land. Amelia taught them letters and numbers at the kitchen table. Preston taught them to track weather and read animal behavior. Together, they raised children who were confident and capable, who understood partnership and equality because they saw it modeled every day. In 1885, they finally built the larger house they had discussed years ago. 4 bedrooms, a proper kitchen, a living area with a stone fireplace. It felt extravagant after the small original house, but they had earned it. The ranch was prosperous, their debts long paid, their reputation solid. The original house became an office and guest quarters. The bunkhouse had been expanded twice to accommodate their growing crew. They now ran over 1,000 head of cattle and had established breeding lines that other ranchers sought. "You ever regret it?" Preston asked one evening in 1886. They sat on the porch of the new house, watching sunset paint the mountains while Sarah and Thomas played in the yard. "Staying here instead of selling and returning east?" "Never. Not once." Amelia leaned against his shoulder. "Do you regret staying?" "You could have moved on, found another ranch, not been tied down." "I regret nothing except not telling you I loved you sooner." He kissed the top of her head. "You are my home, Amelia. You and the children and this land we have built together. Everything else is details." "We did build it together, did we not? Neither of us could have done this alone." "No, but together we made something lasting." They sat in comfortable silence, watching their children, feeling the satisfaction of a life well lived. In 1888, when Sarah was 10 and Thomas 7, they hired a proper teacher to hold school in one of the outbuildings 3 days a week. Several neighboring ranches sent their children too, creating a small community. Amelia taught on the days the teacher was absent, discovering she loved education almost as much as ranching. Preston expanded their horse breeding operation, developing a line of working horses that were steady and smart. Thomas showed particular aptitude for this work, able to gentle young horses with patience and understanding. Sarah announced at 12 that she wanted to be a rancher like her parents. Not get married and move away. Stay here and work. You can do both, Amelia told her. Marriage does not mean giving up your dreams if you choose the right partner. Like you and Papa, exactly like that. In 1890, 15 years after Amelia arrived in Wyoming expecting to give orders and instead found partnership, they held a celebration. The ranch was now one of the largest and most successful in the territory. They employed 20 people full-time, including Miguel, who had become Preston's true partner in management, and Charlie, who oversaw the horse operation. Friends and neighbors came from miles around. They roasted cattle, played music, told stories. Sarah and Thomas helped serve food, both of them confident and capable. At 14 and 11, they already understood ranch operations better than most adults. Late in the evening, Preston pulled Amelia away from the crowd to stand by the fence overlooking their land. 15 years, he said. Sometimes it feels like yesterday you stepped off that train. Sometimes it feels like you have been here forever. Both are true. She laced her fingers through his. Thank you. For what? For seeing me. For treating me as an equal when no one else ever had. For building this life with me instead of trying to control it. I should thank you for the same things. He turned to face her. I was drifting before you. Just working, surviving. You gave me purpose. You gave me love. You gave me a family and a future. We gave each other those things. Yes, he kissed her soft and sweet. And I would choose you again every time in every life. Even when I am stubborn, especially then. They returned to the celebration hand in hand, to their children and their friends and the land they had built together through choices and partnership and love. Years continued to pass with the rhythm of ranch life. Seasons turned, cattle were born and sold, fences were mended and rebuilt. Sarah grew into a young woman who could outride most of the hands and calculated cattle weights in her head faster than anyone. Thomas developed his father's quiet strength and his mother's analytical mind. In 1895, when Sarah was 17, a young man from a neighboring ranch began courting her seriously. Preston was protective, but Amelia reminded him that Sarah had been raised to make good choices and recognize partnership when she saw it. He treats her well, Amelia observed one evening after the young man, Daniel, had visited for supper. He asks her opinion. He listens when she talks about the ranch. He had better, or I will throw him out on his ear. Preston, she laughed. She is capable of throwing him out herself if he does not measure up. We raised her to know her worth. We did we not? He sounded simultaneously proud and melancholy. She is growing up. She is, but she is not leaving us. Daniel wants to work here, learn our operation. Sarah already told him she will not leave the ranch. She told him that directly, of course. She is our daughter. Amelia smiled. She was very clear that any marriage would be a partnership and would not require her to give up her work. And he agreed, enthusiastically, according to Sarah. Preston relaxed slightly. Then I suppose I can approve. Sarah and Daniel married in 1896. Instead of moving away, they built a small house on ranch land, and Daniel joined the operation officially. He was a hard worker and genuinely respected Sarah's knowledge and experience. Watching them together, Amelia saw echoes of her own marriage, the same partnership and equality. Thomas showed no interest in marrying young. He was content working with the horses, developing breeding lines, traveling occasionally to sell stock. At 15, he was already respected for his expertise. "He is like you were," Amelia told Preston one evening, "focused on work, not particularly social." "I was social eventually. I married you. After Thomas had to hire you and I had to essentially court you," Preston laughed. "That is not how I remember it." "No, how do you remember it?" "I remember being terrified of how much I wanted to be near you. I remember thinking you deserved better than a drifter foreman. I remember you being brave enough to say you cared first. We were both brave." "Yes, we were." In 1898, their 21st anniversary, Preston arranged for Miguel and Daniel to manage the ranch for a week, so he and Amelia could travel to Denver. It was the first real time away they had taken since marrying. They stayed in a hotel, saw a play, ate in restaurants, walked through streets that felt crowded and loud after years of open space. It was interesting and exciting, but by the third day, Amelia was homesick. "I miss the quiet," she admitted. "I miss seeing the mountains from the porch. I miss the children, even though they are adults now." Preston took her hand as they strolled through a park. "I miss our bed and our home. Should we go back early? Let us stay the week. But next anniversary we celebrate at home." On their final evening in Denver, they had dinner at a nice restaurant and Preston gave her a gift, a delicate necklace with a small pendant shaped like a mountain. "I had it made," he said as she examined it. "It is supposed to be the view from our porch." I do not know if the jeweler got it right, but I tried to describe it. Tears filled Amelia's eyes. "It is perfect. You are perfect. I just love you. That is all I have ever done. Just loved you and tried to make you happy. You have succeeded beyond measure." They returned home to find everything running smoothly. Sarah and Daniel had managed brilliantly. Thomas had sold 3 horses for excellent prices. The ranch had survived their absence without issue. "We could travel more," Preston suggested. "Now that we know we can leave without everything falling apart." But they never did, not really. A few trips to Cheyenne, an occasional overnight in a nearby town. Mostly they stayed home because home was what they wanted. The ranch, the mountains, their family, each other. In 1900, Sarah gave birth to their first grandchild, a daughter named Amelia after her grandmother. Preston held his granddaughter with the same reverence he had held his own children, marveling at the continuation of what they had built. "We are grandparents," he said unnecessarily. "We are." Amelia watched him with the baby. "How do you feel? Old, happy, blessed?" He looked up at her. "When I think about that first day when you stepped off the train expecting to give orders, I never imagined this. A family, grandchildren, a legacy. I gave you orders eventually. You gave me partnership. That was better than any order." Thomas married in 1902 at 21 to a quiet young woman from Cheyenne who loved horses as much as he did. They also chose to stay on the ranch, building another small house. Their first child, a son named Preston, was born in 1903. By 1905, the ranch was truly a family operation. Preston and Amelia had stepped back from day-to-day management, letting Sarah and Daniel handle most decisions. Thomas ran the horse breeding program independently. But Preston still rode out most mornings, checking on things, offering advice when asked. Amelia still managed the books and planning. "We should probably officially retire," Preston said one morning. They sat on the porch with coffee, watching sunrise. He was 54 now, she was 51. Both still healthy and active, but feeling their age more than they once had. "What would we do if we retired?" "This." He gestured to the porch, the mountains, the morning. "Sit here and enjoy what we built, play with grandchildren, take those trips we keep talking about." "That sounds boring." "Does it? Terribly boring," she smiled. "I like working, I like being useful, then we will keep working, just maybe not from dawn to dusk anymore." That sounds reasonable. They settled into a comfortable rhythm, working when they wanted, resting when they needed, spending time with their growing family. 2 more grandchildren arrived, one from Sarah and Daniel, one from Thomas and his wife. The ranch continued to prosper under the next generation's management. In 1910, the railroad expanded closer to their property, making cattle sales easier. Thomas proposed building a small station on ranch land to ship both cattle and horses directly. It was ambitious but practical. They held a family meeting to discuss the investment. Sarah presented detailed financial projections. Thomas explained the logistical advantages. Daniel outlined construction needs. Preston and Amelia listened, occasionally asking questions, but mostly watching their children manage a complex decision with competence and confidence. "What do you think?" Sarah asked finally. "Should we do it?" "What do you think?" Preston countered. "It is your operation now, but we want your input." Amelia glanced at Preston. They had the same thought. She could see it in his eyes. Their children did not need their permission, but they wanted their blessing, which was different. "I think it is an excellent idea," Amelia said. "I think you have planned it carefully and considered the risks. I trust your judgment completely." "I agree," Preston added. "You have built on what we started and made it better." This is the next logical step. The station was completed in 1911. It transformed their operation, allowing them to ship directly and cut out expensive middlemen. The ranch's profits increased significantly. "We should travel now," Preston said in 1912. "Seriously. Take a month, see California, maybe travel to Oregon. The children can manage and we have the money." "A month," Amelia considered. "That is a long time. We have been married 35 years. I think we can take a month." "Where would we go?" "Anywhere you want." They planned a 6-week trip for spring 1912, after calving season but before the heat of summer. They would take the railroad west to California, travel up the coast, and return through Oregon and Idaho. It would be the adventure they had never quite gotten around to taking. The trip was magnificent. They saw the ocean for the first time, vast and terrifying and beautiful. They stood in redwood forests and felt impossibly small. They stayed in hotels and ate in restaurants and were tourists without responsibilities. But they also wrote letters home constantly, asking about the ranch, about the children and grandchildren. And when they returned in early summer, dusty and tired and happy, Preston said, "That was wonderful. Let us never do it again." Amelia laughed. "Agreed. I prefer adventures in our own yard." The years continued to pass, each one rich and full. More grandchildren arrived until they had 8 total, ranging from infants to teenagers. The ranch thrived under Sarah and Daniel's management, with Thomas's horse operation becoming regionally famous. Preston and Amelia settled into elder roles, advising when asked, but mostly enjoying the fruits of their decades of labor. In 1920, Amelia was 67 and Preston was 69. Both were slowing down, bodies protesting years of hard work. But both were still sharp, still engaged, still deeply in love. 43 years, Preston said on their anniversary. They sat on the porch as always, watching sunset paint the mountains. "That is a good long time. It has gone by quickly and slowly." Some days felt endless, especially early on when we were building everything from scratch. But the years themselves flew. He took her hand. "I would not change anything, not even the hard parts, especially not the hard parts. They made us who we are." Amelia squeezed his fingers. "Do you remember that first day, when you told me I could choose? I remember thinking you were the bravest woman I had ever met, stepping off that train into unknown territory, ready to take on a ranch you knew nothing about. I was terrified. You were magnificent. You still are." We were good together, were we not? We built something real and lasting. We built everything I ever wanted. Preston lifted her hand to his lips. You are everything I ever wanted. They sat in the glow of the setting sun. Two people who had chosen each other and kept choosing each other through decades of work and love and partnership. Around them, their family thrived. The ranch they had built together spread across the landscape, a legacy of what two people could accomplish when they saw each other as equals. Tell me again, Amelia said suddenly. Tell me what you said that first day. Preston smiled, remembering. I told you that you could give orders if you wanted, but it would be better to learn, to understand the work. That I would not treat you like a child needing protection. That if you wanted the ranch to be truly yours, you needed to know it. Then you could make informed choices and they would be good ones. You offered me partnership before I even knew I wanted it. I offered you what you deserved, what everyone deserves, the chance to choose their own path. And I chose you. We chose each other. He pulled her close. Best choice I ever made. Mine too. The sun finally set, and stars emerged one by one in the endless Wyoming sky. Preston and Amelia sat together as they had for 43 years, partners and equals, watching the night settle over the land they had claimed together. The family they had raised, the life they had built through hard work and mutual respect and abiding love. Their story had begun with a telegram and a train ride, with a woman expecting to give orders and a cowboy who gave her choices instead. It had grown into something neither could have imagined. A marriage of true partnership, children raised to know their worth, a ranch that would support generations. They had built not just a business but a legacy of equality, proving that two people working together as true partners could accomplish more than either could alone. The porch door opened and little Preston, their grandson, stuck his head out. Grandma, Grandpa, Mama says supper is ready. Are you coming in? In a minute, Amelia called back. But Preston was already standing, offering his hand to help her up as he had for over 40 years. She took it, and they walked together into the house, into the warmth and noise of family, into the life they had built by choosing each other, every single day, from that first moment until this one and all the moments still to come. Inside, the long table was crowded with children and grandchildren. Sarah and Daniel sat at one end with their 4 children. Thomas and his wife sat at the other with their 3. The youngest grandchild, just 2 years old, banged a spoon demanding attention. Conversations overlapped, laughter rose and fell, dishes were passed hand to hand. Preston and Amelia took their seats at the middle of the table, surrounded by the family they had created. Sarah raised her glass for a toast. To Mama and Papa, 43 years married today. You taught us what partnership means. You showed us that marriage is not about one person leading and the other following, but about walking together. Everything we have, everything we are, started with you too. Thank you. To Grandma and Grandpa. The grandchildren chorused, raising their glasses of milk and water. Amelia's eyes filled with tears. Preston's arm came around her shoulders, solid and sure. They looked at each other, decades of memories passing between them in a glance. The scared woman stepping off the train. The careful foreman offering choices. Learning to ride, learning to rope, learning to love. Building a ranch, building a family, building a life where equality was not just an ideal but a daily practice. To family, Preston said, his voice thick with emotion. To choices and partnership. To the best 43 years a man could ask for. To many more, Amelia added, raising her glass. They drank and ate and talked late into the evening. When everyone finally dispersed to their own homes, Preston and Amelia cleaned up together as they always had, working in comfortable synchronization. Tired, Preston asked as they finished, exhausted, happy, the same as every day. She dried her hands on a towel. Thank you, Preston. For all of it. Thank you, Amelia, for seeing something in a drifter foreman that was worth keeping. I saw a man who respected me enough to give me choices. That was worth everything. They walked to their bedroom arm in arm, changing into nightclothes and climbing into the bed they had shared for 4 decades. Preston pulled Amelia close and she settled against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. I love you, she murmured. I will always love you. I love you too. Always have, always will. They fell asleep like that, two people who had arrived at partnership from different directions and built something beautiful together. Outside, Wyoming night settled deep and quiet over the ranch. Stars wheeled overhead, cattle lowed softly in the distance. The mountains stood eternal against the sky. And in the morning, as they had for 43 years, Preston and Amelia Vance Fletcher would wake together, have coffee on the porch, and face another day as equals, as partners, as the truest of loves in a wild country they had made home through choice and hard work, and the simple, revolutionary act of seeing each other as equals from the very first day.